That's what you have to do. That's what estate planning is. Estate planning is, how do I make sure my wishes are carried out when I am no longer here to tell anybody what those wishes are?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to admit your mortality, and you have to be able to confront what life is going to look like for your spouse or for your kids or for other heirs you might have, other family members who might be involved. And that's really hard for people. Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren Fisher.
And I'm Dave Fisher. We're a husband and wife team of certified financial planners, and together we make up Team Fisher Financial. Welcome to our new series we're calling And Money.
As both a concept and an object, money is a prevalent component of our world and intersects with so many areas of our lives.
By the nature of our job as CFPs, our days are filled with constant conversations around money. Conversations we think are vital for people to consider and understand for their financial universe and beyond.
All right, well, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of And Money. My name is Lauren Fisher, and to my right is my husband, Dave Fisher. We are both certified financial planners, and we make up Team Fisher Financial. And today, we are going to talk about legacy and money. This is one of the biggest pieces of financial planning, but it is also one of the most overlooked.
Yes.
One that is so quickly pushed to the side. People don't want to talk about it. There's a lot of procrastination around this particularly. So we're going to take some time to actually talk through why it's important and share, honestly, some horror stories, both from names that everybody will recognize and probably have seen things in the media for, and also some just personal anecdotes of things that we've seen over the years, just to drive home how important this whole thing is when you're talking about legacy and estate planning.
Right. And from my perspective, it's the thing that most planners talk about, but they don't actually implement or can implement. That's a big reason why we went to Financial Gravity or partnered with Financial Gravity in this case, right? Being multifamily office, able to help people specifically with their estate planning. And so many times, I can't tell you how many times I've said, hey, go get a will, go get a trust, go get your power of attorney. Tell us when you're done with this. And we have these conversations over and over again with the same clients, and it hasn't happened.
And it's always, oh, yeah, I really need to do that. And yeah, you're right, I know. And most of the time, that's all an advisor can really do is say, you need a will. You need a trust. You might need multiple trusts, depending on how complicated your estate is. But yeah, part of the reason that we moved, like you said, is because we can do more than just say, like, you need a will.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But today, what we wanted to do, like Lauren was saying, is talk about why it's important. What is happening in this world that causes us to neglect it, first of all? What are some stories that help us, I would say, spur us on to actually take action? And what are some statistics around it? Like, what are we seeing? Why are we not jumping in like we should be into legacy planning?
And staying on top of it, too.
Oh, yeah. Well, and that's the thing is most planning that we do, it is iterative, and people know it's iterative. Like, it's a process. You continue to follow this process. Not every meeting is going to be the same, but things change. Everything that we do, like, we know people are changing their incomes over time. Like, that's what's happening. But it's not just that. It's not income and assets changing over time. There's a lot more to it. And having that process with the iterative process applying also to legacy planning, it's something that is foreign to most people. But we want to make sure that we're on top of it because tomorrow is not a given.
For anybody.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So let's start because I love statistics because I think they help. They're not everything, but I think they help give us, I need my glasses, give us some kind of to get our hands around what it looks like for the average person.
Yeah.
So we have some statistics starting with LegalZoom. that only 32% of Americans have a will.
Are these like adults? 18
yes, adult.
and
Yeah.
Wow.
When they say
I was
that,
like, a bunch of kids don't have
adult.
wills out there.
Come on, kids, get on it. Yeah. So 32% of like adult Americans have a will.
Okay.
So only a third of the country has a will.
All right.
And that broken down into more granular detail by age, 41% of people between the ages of 18 to 34 and 34% of people between 35 and 54. So between 30 to 40% of people anywhere between the ages of 18 and 54 have never discussed estate planning with anybody.
What's surprising to me, did the percentage go down?
Yeah, well,
like that makes, barely though.
Yes, that makes sense. It goes down 7%.
I would expect it to go down a whole lot more. Huh. Wow, that's shocking to me.
Yeah.
Because when we're talking about the age group, 18 to 34, you know, some people are growing their families, and that's when people want to have a conversation about a will, right?
A lot of times that's
like the first conversation, because guardianship is dictated within the will. There are some scary stories, more anecdotal, because we're not going to go into too much detail, where people are fighting over who has rights to the kids and who has rights to the money. Scary concept.
Yeah, and then you're leaving it up to a judge to figure out
your family dynamics
and who's going to raise your kids.
Yeah, that's terrifying. So that's that category. But the next category up, the 35 to 54, this is like, hey, we're actually growing our assets. Our family's growing. We likely, at this point, if we have a family, like we have kids now, it is very much in play that we should have some form of estate planning.
Yeah, and you're in that age range. You are typically in your highest earning years.
Yeah.
And one of the myths, and we're going to talk later about like the biggest estate planning mistakes that people make, but one of the myths is that I don't have enough money or my estate is not big enough to need a will.
Right.
Which is completely and absolutely false.
Right.
Pretty much if you are over the age of 18, you need a will.
Yeah.
Maybe 20. Like me, let's maybe say like out of college.
Right.
When you're not still being like claimed as a dependent and just being a crazy person in college.
That's what we were in college. Yes. Crazy people.
Yes, we were.
For anybody that has kids in college right now or grandkids, like they're just crazy people. Apparently,
they are crazy. They're finding their way. It's their first taste of the real world, but the safety of maybe mom and dad are still paying some of the way. Yep. Anyways, and then moving forward, 52% of people, so more than half of people, don't know where their parents store estate planning documents. So even if they have a will and an estate plan all written down, nobody knows where to find it.
So, and this is very interesting because most of the time when people store estate planning documents, it's with the lawyer that they have the most recent version, right? But if they don't know who the lawyer is, they're just calling a bunch of lawyers in town.
How many adult children know who their parents' estate planning attorney is?
Nope.
Very few.
Yep.
And again, another myth is like, oh, I bet if like rich people probably know. No, they don't.
No, they don't. But then they're like, oh, wait, do they have a safe deposit box? Did mom or dad talk about the safe deposit box? Where's that? Which key? Bank?
Yeah.
Where is this located? Or is it, in a box in the attic, or is there a safe at the house? Yeah. Like that would probably be where most people would look first, right? It's the safe in the house. But then you have like 3 iterations old wills and trusts and various things located in there that you never updated because it's in the safe. You just forget about it.
Yeah. And this really hits so many things, but the other thing that LegalZoom said was there's a massive wealth transfer that has started and is expected to keep going for the next like 10 to 15 years.
Right.
And it's estimated mostly from boomers to their heirs. There's going to be a transfer of $36 trillion of assets.
Wow.
That should be moving from one generation to the next. And it's the greatest wealth transfer that I think historically, since it's been tracked, that we've seen, which makes sense.
Yeah.
But that behind the backdrop of all these other statistics, that there's this massive wealth transfer that's supposed to be happening, and yet a third of people have even put anything in place. So you have 2/3 of people who are going to be stuck going through a nightmare probate process.
Yes.
So why don't you explain, because I'm sure everybody's heard that word,
Probate.
most everybody, but what is probate?
Well, probate is when you go, and I'm keeping it very simple on purpose. You go in front of a judge, and the judge looks at all the documentation that you have for the family. It could be wills, or it could be intestate. They die intestate without a will.
Yeah,
right?
To die intestate means to die without any estate plan or any will.
They look at any other documentation. They look at the family makeup, all the assets, and then the judge determines where all of that goes. Guardianship, who is taking care of kids. Like, there's so much that literally one person decides for your future, for your kids' futures, for your grandkids' futures. And that's what probate effectively is. It's very simplistic terms.
Yes, which sounds simple enough. Go in front of a judge and they figure it out. On average, the probate process, on average, takes anywhere between 9 and 20 months.
Oof.
So that includes court dates. That includes attorney's fees. One of the other statistics we saw was that the cost of probate ranges anywhere from 3 to 10% of an estate's total value. And most of that is going to attorneys who have to navigate and help you navigate the probate process. And that's that like 9-month, like lower end, that's assuming everything goes smoothly. That's assuming everybody agrees on what's going to happen. You're just trying to get stamps of approval. You're just trying to get through a court system. 9 months. If you add even the slightest bit of conflict, the slightest bit of complexity,
somebody comes out of left field and says, "No, they promised me this, right? That wasn't in this document," or I have a paper will that they made last second and it is signed and, notarized, whatever.
Yeah. Or even they may have assets tied up in accounts that would normally pass outside of probate, but they didn't name any beneficiaries. They didn't list any benefit. Okay, guess what? That has to go through probate. You have to figure out, where does the money go? Who does it go to? And who controls it?
Wow. 3 to 10% is massive. And some of these estates, like many people, you're probably thinking in terms of your own estate. If you're listening to this, how broad this is. It's not just, my, $100,000, million, $2 million estate. This is the tens of millions. This is the 9, 10 figure people. Many times they die intestate. Why do you think that is? I'm curious to know your thoughts on that.
I think whether you have an estate worth $100 million or $12, people do not want to face the reality of death. People do not want to admit that there is going to come a day where they will no longer be here. There's going to come a day where their heart stops beating, their lungs stop breathing. It's coming for all of us.
Yeah.
And people don't want to admit that to themselves or anybody else. And that's what you have to do. That's what estate planning is. Estate planning is, how do I make sure my wishes are carried out when I am no longer here to tell anybody what those wishes are? So you have to admit your mortality, and you have to be able to confront what life is going to look like for your spouse or for your kids or for other heirs you might have, other family members who might be involved. And that's really hard for people. And it's harder for people than they want to admit, which is why it's procrastinated so much. It's pushed aside so much, because it forces you to say, once you're gone, once you are dead, what are we going to do here?
Right.
But And as harsh as this sounds, like, let's call a spade, that's super selfish. Because then you are guaranteeing your family, while they're trying to mourn the loss, while they're
hopefully they're mourning your loss.
So, but as they are grappling with your passing, now you've put this incredible burden on them.
Right.
And we have seen it time and again, both from afar and with people we know, whose families have been torn apart by this.
Yeah.
People who are estranged from parents, estranged from siblings, estranged from grandkids. And the other thing is, everybody thinks they're the exception, and everybody thinks their family is the exception.
Yeah. Everybody gets along. We would never do
our
that.
Our family would never. Our kids would never. Yeah, they would.
Yeah.
Yeah, they would.
Put into the worst possible position, back up against the wall. People do crazy things.
And again, in a time of grief, when people already a lot of times don't necessarily act like themselves when they're grieving.
Yeah.
Because death is not natural. Death is not right. Death is not good. No matter what a lot of people will say. I hate it when people, such an aside, but I hate it when people say, like, oh, death is a natural part of life. No, it's not. Death was never supposed to exist. But that's another story for another day. But when they're grappling with that, try throwing grief into a super complicated, tense legal situation.
Right.
And it really comes down to, are you willing to admit your own mortality in order to care for the people that are going to be here when you're not?
Yeah. It's a big hurdle.
It is.
Yeah. And everybody, you can say the pithy statement, what are the two guarantees in life? Death and taxes.
Yeah.
But until you actually face the reality and do something about it, like you're kind of putting that on the back burner. You're implying that it's not important enough for your time today. I'll get to it when I have time available. But like I said before, there is no better time than the present, and you are not guaranteed tomorrow. So how can you take care of people you love and cherish today? Get your legacy planning in place.
Yeah.
For instance, like, there's so many anecdotes, and we have lots of different types of clients, and because we value privacy for our clients, anecdotally, I'm going to speak to this, but you already mentioned families being torn apart, where sibling sets, people that grew up together and love each other, spend birthdays together, are doing things together, life together, all of a sudden the estate is now in question. There's infighting, maybe not even infighting, but the fact that there's money on the table, the fact that maybe it takes just one person. Everybody else is very, very calm with it. They're very peaceable. They want to approach this with a caring and loving mindset toward each other. One person jumps in and says, no, I deserve X, or I want this part of the estate and I deserve it. That throws a huge wrench into everything.
Yeah. And we have a friend who told us that he was talking to his estate planning attorney, and one of the biggest estate planning mistakes that we think exist is, even if you have everything buttoned up, even if you have your will is in place, you have trust, you have a pour over will, you have everything in place, not talking to all of the people involved, not just your heirs. There are people who are named executors of estates that had no idea that they were supposed to take on that role, or trustees.
Imagine that being dropped on your lap, just being like, oh, sorry, the next year of your life, you're going to be, or multiple years of your life, you're going to be taking care of my estate.
And so not number one, just giving people heads up, but also sitting people down and saying, this is how it's all set up, and this is what I want to happen. He said the estate planning attorney told him that for the people who actually do that, and usually it's with their kids, because that's usually who the heirs are. Not always, but usually.
Right.
when they say, and a lot of times there are stipulations in a will that if anybody contests a will and it's ruled against them, they're written out of the will. That's a mechanism that people will use. And anytime they explain that, usually what happens is everybody in the room looks to the problem person. They're like, if any of you cause trouble, and everyone's like, so everyone usually kind of knows who might be. Sometimes there are people who come out of left field that you're like, I thought you would be totally good with this.
Come on, Bob.
But when your kids and your spouse and your executor and you're like, if you, from the horse's mouth, if you say, this is how I've set it up, this is why, and this is what I want this to look like, it's a lot harder.
What was that? It's the phrase, it was like the dollar clause, right? If you dispute my wishes, how I've laid it out, you will receive $1 from my estate. And it was actually the same person who shared a story with me of this person worth a lot of money out in West Texas, oil money. And they died, I believe it was intestate. Like they had some things set up, but it wasn't actually acknowledged in the court system. He owned a business. He passed away. His kids were also operating within the business, and it was assumed that they were going to take over, especially one of the sons that really had risen in a leadership role. And it was very much assumed by the family that this was the process. He was going to take over. Things were going to go really well. Everybody was going to get taken care of. His wife, their mom, was going to be in a great position financially. What happened is that it wasn't clear in the documents that he left who was going to be running the business. And as the rightful heir in many of these situations, his spouse said, I'm going to run the business. No experience. None.
Had never been involved.
Had not been involved. And she was basically saying, like, I'm going to run the business. You all get in line. And that's what I want to do. Well, the son, especially the one that was running a lot of it, especially toward his end of life, like unexpected, but was running it. He's like, no, I'm going to run this business.
It's what Dad wanted. It's what we've all
this
talked
is
about.
what the plan was. What are you doing? You're going to run this into the ground. He said, Mom, if you do this, you will not see your grandkids.
And she did it.
And she chose the business, the money, the lifestyle.
God, that's heartbreaking.
Over her grandkids. And to this day, still has not seen her grandkids.
God, that breaks my heart. That's just so, it's so disappointing. And again, people hearing this are going to think, oh, my parents would never do that. And like, yeah, even hearing, I'm like, oh, my mom would never do that.
Yeah.
But when money gets involved,
yeah,
people do crazy stuff. And it's not just like anecdotal, because some of that feels like, yeah, but that's not me. And again, like, I don't have that type of money. But in some of these larger estates, especially from celebrities recently, we've seen there are a few, like Jimmy Buffett. A few days ago it came out, like he had
somewhere. No.
he had an estate worth like $275 million.
That's it, right?
Yeah. Just drop in the bucket. He actually did have a full estate plan set up.
Yeah.
But it has come out recently because of filings, like public filings within the court. The co-trustees of his estate, his former business manager, who was like one of his best friends, and his wife are now suing one another.
Oh my goodness.
To get each other removed as trustees. And it's fascinating. Like she is saying he took like $1.7 million in fees as a co-trustee.
In the first year,
in like 1 year or something. And the estate, which is worth $275 million, is only spitting out $2 million a year in income, which is a really, really low number. He's saying she's
there are lots of Margaritavilles out there. So.
He's saying she's irresponsible. She can't be trusted. It's getting messy, and it's only been like, I think it was like a week ago, maybe not even
all
that
that
long,
news came
that
out.
All
right?
that news came out.
Yeah.
And so that one's a weird one because he did have everything set.
Yeah.
I think that would be one where like a trust protector should have been brought in.
And that for people that don't know, it's kind of like having a third party that is purview to your estate. It's wonderful. For a lot of our clients, it does make sense. Sometimes you're like, I trust these family members to get it done. Other times, having a objective third party that's also a trustee that's tied to it, maybe they don't know the family dynamics as well, but they can play referee really well.
And you can say this person must be a licensed fiduciary.
Right.
So sometimes it's a financial advisor, sometimes it's a CPA, but it's someone who basically has oversight into the management of the trust and has some levers to pull. Sometimes they have veto power and they're just like, I'm just reading the documents and I'm just going to kind of mediate what's happening, especially when you have co-trustees. There was another one, Aretha Franklin's is fascinating because she passed away in 2018. Her estate is still not settled. There are parts of it that have been, but hers was this really weird situation where there was it's called a codicil. It's a handwritten will.
Yeah.
There was one from 2010 that was like
it's just an addition to the will, right? But this one was specifically handwritten.
It was like the whole thing was handwritten. And that was in like a safe, and it was dated and signed by her from 2010.
Okay.
Then there was another handwritten document from 2014 that was quite literally found in her couch cushions.
Was it signed? And
yes, but there were differences, and she has 4 kids, I believe. There were differences between the two, where the 2014 one was more specific in who got which assets.
Yeah.
So I think at least one of the sons...
Now, did her signature look the same?
Yeah, no. That was their whole thing. One of the sons, the 2010 version, benefited him more. And so he was like, this was found in the couch cushions. This cannot be real. This cannot, this is not enforceable. We need to go with the 2010 version that we all knew about.
Oh, no.
And then some of the other siblings, who I think the 2014 version maybe benefited them more, were like, no, this is the most recent one. It's clear. And they're like, it was found in the couch cushions. It doesn't matter what was found. And so there's all this infighting between them.
Wow.
And again, it had to go to a judge to decide. And so I think what happened is the 2014 will, the handwritten one that was found in the couch cushions, was the legitimate one. But there was nothing in there about her royalties, her music catalog. So that's all still ongoing 7 years later.
So was that in the 2010 will, all the royalties?
That I don't think so.
Okay.
Because I would think if one version was silent on it, and I'm not a lawyer, so I'm guessing, but I would think if one version was silent on it and another talked about it,
then
that you'd still use that. But I think it was just handwritten, like, this kid gets this kid gets this.
Wow.
Yeah. And when you're not here to explain why this one was in the couch cushions and they're handwritten, and that's another thing, is anything is better than nothing.
Right.
A handwritten will is better than nothing at all, but it's a lot easier to contest a handwritten will.
Yeah. I mean, forgery, you have to get forensics involved. It becomes a ridiculous process, but you can also, like we said, over structure it, over engineer it to the point where you have competing trusts, and all of a sudden people don't know which way is up. But altogether, like the goal of this is predominantly, how are your assets going to be divvied out, and not just that, like the values you want instilled and extrapolated from there too. Like that's a big reason people will have trusts involved, is because you can be more specific in how your wishes are carried out. But even then, I love what you said earlier about having the actual conversation, and not just one, but like multiple conversations about what the document says and how does that play out in how your wishes are done actually when you're gone.
Yeah.
So everybody's on the same page. It's an uncomfortable, it's like, it's you facing the fact that you're going to die, and then you imparting that to whoever you want to inherit, right? And saying, I'm going to die, and just saying it out loud in front of people. This is what I want now. Like, both of those are big steps to take. Yeah. And there's a reason why a lot of people don't take them.
Yeah. And these aren't necessary. They're not fun conversations. They're not easy conversations.
Yeah.
But they are necessary.
Exactly.
Yeah. And going back to what you said about, like, you can have competing trusts or different documents saying different things. Some of that comes down to another really big mistake people make is like the set it and forget it thing of, oh yeah, I made a will 12 years ago. I'm like, okay, well, number one, your life 12 years ago probably looks way different than your life now.
Yeah.
And maybe not 12. That's a little out there, but like 4, 5, 6 years. And there've been other
I wouldn't
times,
say 12 years is out there. I bet most people,
probably,
it's usually a 10 to 20 year period of time.
Yeah,
they're like, I've had kids. Oh, now they're off in college. Probably should get that updated.
Yeah, but even think about, okay, some stuff that we've looked at, I'm like, well, you put this in place pre-2017, pre-Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. This tax structure doesn't make sense anymore.
Yeah. And we didn't even touch on taxes today.
Oh yeah, we haven't yet. That was one of like not doing any tax planning when making an estate plan. And it's not just related to whether you may be subject to estate taxes, because the threshold's pretty high. It might come down.
Right now
it's
pretty high. Yeah.
We'll see.
Almost 28 million for married.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's also, thinking through, are certain heirs in different tax brackets? Okay, that might affect which accounts go to which kids. And there's considerations of like, well, we want everything to be fair and equal. And it's like, okay, but let's look at the after tax version of what's fair.
Yeah.
And people don't think about stuff like that. Or, lawyers who are not paid to think, that's not their job. They are not paid to think about your tax implications. Okay, what you've set up an irrevocable trust for a kid and you've put property in there, irrevocable trusts don't get a step up in basis.
Right.
Just things that you want to think through, and maybe that's okay. Just depending on what your situation looks like.
Right.
But if we're not even thinking through it, then you've got potentially a lot of surprises. You've got heirs who might have bigger tax bills than they're expecting, bigger burdens than you were even intending for them to have to deal with. So it's not just like, let me put some documents down so that my financial advisor stops bugging me about it so that I can check it off a list. It's something we say, like, we need to at least look at it yearly.
Yeah.
And sometimes it'll be like a quick, hey, nothing's really changed in the last 12 months. Everything we talked about still makes sense. And that might happen 3, 4, 5 years in a row. But then it's going to be like, okay, we're starting to look at kids going to college. Season of life is changing.
Yeah.
One of the kids is 18. They don't need a guardian listed anymore. Like, what does that look like?
Or we are selling a business and we're well above the estate tax threshold, likely in the future. How can we start planning, 20, 30, 40 years from now to make sure that we don't have to worry about a huge tax bill? And thinking, well, if I just put the right trusts in place, everything will be fine. Yes and no. Yeah. Everybody knows about marital trust, bypass. Well, not everybody.
I don't think everybody knows about them.
If you're a good financial planner, estate planning attorney, you name it, like, about the different structures you can put in place, things, trust for homes and vacation homes. And there's just a lot you can do to get money out of your estate. But if you aren't willing to start with, like, what are your actual wishes? What values do you want to impart? Like, we'll never even get to that point.
Yeah.
Those are factors that are the next level. And too many times we come across people that are just like, I don't even want to put in the work to make sure that my kids are in the best spot possible.
Mm-hmm.
It's very disheartening because it does take a lot of work. It is outside of your normal job. You don't probably know much about this.
You're going to have to pay at least some level of fees. And nobody likes to spend money.
Right. Yeah. On something you don't want to talk
something that
about.
you don't want to talk about.
Exactly.
It's like, yeah, let me pay someone money to explain life after my death. That's not particularly fun. But again, it may not be the most enjoyable thing, but it's so necessary. And there's also stuff with it that people don't think about prior to your death, where we've seen people with major medical emergencies who don't have powers of attorney in place.
There are spouses that can't make decisions for many times. I would say a husband in a heart attack or stroke or something like that. They're in the hospital and they're unable to make a decision for their spouse.
Yeah.
Because there's no power of attorney.
And even people who've dealt with that and then having no way to access certain accounts. Like we've seen situations where, a husband had accounts set up only in his name. And there was no malicious intent behind that. It's just like how it was set up.
Yeah. And
then a medical emergency happens and there's no power of attorney. And so the wife cannot get access to the account.
Yeah.
Or, I can't remember her name, but there was that famous story of the woman who had brain damage and she was in a vegetative state. And her husband said, she told me if something like this ever happened, let me go, take me off life support. Her parents said, no, absolutely not. Our daughter would never say that.
Right.
There was no medical directive. There was nothing written down. And so they spent years, and it was a very public legal battle. I think it was in the 90s. I can't remember her name. And again, these are tragic situations that, number one, nobody thinks is going to happen to them.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to put out of their brain, but it's one of those things where if you take the time,
right,
spend the time to do it, as much of a slog as it'll feel like, you can have peace of mind that if that tragedy strikes, if it does happen to you, because nobody ever thinks it's going to happen to them. Right. I mean, it can happen to anybody. And so again, it's how do you do this in a way that we hope we never have to touch it. We hope we never have to look at medical directives or powers of attorney or anything.
Yeah.
But how much easier is it to say, oh, I've got that document. We've got it written down, what they wanted. Oh, I can't access this because my husband, my wife took the time to set it up for me.
Yeah. Yeah. The time that we think about getting people gifts for their birthdays, Christmas, different events throughout the year, being thoughtful, it's important to also be thoughtful in this way and give them a gift of a well thought out, very well built estate plan. And help ensure that your legacy continues the way that you want it to.
Yeah. Very well said. And I hope, if nothing else, for people who have these estate plans in place, thinking through, have I sat down and talked to my spouse, my heirs, whoever I've named as the executor, whoever I've named as guardians, give them a heads up.
It's a good idea. Yes.
But really, being intentional, having those conversations if you haven't, or thinking through, hey, maybe it's been a few years. I should go back and think about this again. Hey, maybe that trust protector idea could make a lot of sense. It's actually becoming a lot more popular now. So for those people, just thinking through, is there anything intentional that could help fill in the gaps to keep your family from being in a stressful situation? And then if there's for the other 2/3 of people,
less stressful.
Yes, it'll still be stressful, but set them up for success and for as little additional stress as possible.
Yeah.
And for the statistically 2/3 of people listening to this, get a will, get a trust, multiple trusts maybe, but talk to somebody, whether it's your advisor, whether it's an estate planning attorney who can help you think through these things. Because this is one of those things where like there are a lot of things you don't know and a lot of questions that you probably don't even know to ask.
Right.
So go to someone you trust who can walk you through the questions that you need to be asking yourself, the questions that you need to be asking others. It will not be the most fun thing you do in the world, but it will be so much better for your family and for the legacy that you want to leave and what you want to be remembered for.
Yeah. Couldn't say it better than myself. We are very excited to now have the opportunity to help people in this process.
Yes.
Legacy
firsthand.
planning. Yeah. Firsthand. So like I said, make sure that you have somebody that you trust, that you're talking to them about all of this. And for whether it's the most simple or the most complicated, just make sure that you've taken care of your family well.
Well, after this episode, we are going to be off for a few weeks. We won't have a new episode for a while. We are going on vacation. We're doing our summer trip up to...
you don't want to do traveling money while we're on vacation? I think
not particularly.
Take this on the road.
No, I think I want to unplug and go to the mountains and go hiking and go to White Sands and beat everybody. Because look up White Sands if you've never heard of it. I am an undefeated disc champion, and I very much intend to retain my title.
I should have won the last time. That's okay. We'll make it work.
No, what do you mean you should have won?
I should have won. It was the last run.
Go
of the time.
farther.
Oh my goodness.
If you want to win, then beat me.
Lauren's not competitive at all.
No. All right. Well, we will see you guys in a few weeks. Thank you for listening. And reach out to us if you have any questions or want to talk through anything we've talked about. And B, if there's anything specific, we have lots of ideas, lots of subjects that we're going to go through. But if there's something you want to hear specifically, we would love ideas from people. So we appreciate y'all, and we'll be back in a few weeks.
Bye, y'all.
Thanks, everyone.